Grüß, willkommen in einem anderen aufregendes video. Welcome to another exciting video, in this case episode 17 of my Star Trek Timeline Analysis series of videos. In this video, I'll be discussing the structure of the Federation, specifically political structure, as well as military and organizational. As with my other videos, with the information we have right now, it's really impossible to determine the exact political structure of the United Earth or Federation with any level of accuracy. I don't think the scriptwriters were really thinking of any kind of accuracy anyway, but anyway, let's move on. We can only get a rough idea of the type of command and political structures which is likely, which also aligns with the episode information and the clues left in the script. And while it may be a little bit boring talking about politics, it's interesting to see what kind of conclusion we come to, because often when the writers are creating a structure, they often don't look at the ramification of what they're doing in a particular episode. As with our other videos, what I'm going to be doing is looking at the evidence that we have in the scripts to determine the structure of the Federation. Now, in the episode The Cage, Space Seed, and an additional 4 episodes, the United Spaceship Enterprise is mentioned. United Space must have a political meaning here. Let's see if we can work out what it is. In the episode Corbomite Maneuver, United Earthship Enterprise is mentioned. In the latter episode, Tomorrow is Yesterday, the United Earth Space Probe Agency is mentioned. The term united is linked with Earth. Perhaps the Earth is dropped for brevity in some cases, but we are dealing with a political entity called United Earth. In the episode Balance of Terror, the outposts observing the neutral zone are called Earth outposts. Also in the episodes, the war with the Romulans is called the Earth-Romulan conflict. In the episode A Taste of Armageddon, it's the Earth ambassador who is conducting the negotiations. This may be an error of naming by the aliens, but may indicate it's Earth which is the dominant race in the Federation. Fox describes himself as the ambassador for the United Federation of Planets. Perhaps the Earth and Federation are synonymous. In the episode Friday's Child, Kirk describes the Federation as the Earth Federation, indicating either Earth controls it or it is the origin of the Federation. The term Federation is first mentioned in the episode Arena, the 19th episode produced. The first Federation is mentioned earlier, but it is a different Federation and is an alien political grouping. In Errant of Mercy, the Klingons know the Vulcans are members of the Federation, but Vulcan traders could be neutral. Finally, the Organians mentioned a Federation home planet, which would be Earth. It seems the Federation and Earth may mean the same thing. The term Planetary Federation members is mentioned in the episode The Lights of Zetar. This implies there may be other types of members or other political bodies you can be a member of. Perhaps you can be a member planet, but not a full member with voting rights. Kirk and the Earth ambassador Fox are representing the Federation of Planets. They are not from this organisation, but simply represent it. Thus, an Earthship and ambassador could be representing the Federation as a whole. This term is mentioned in a lot of episodes. Only some of the episodes are listed here. Fox, the ambassador, mentions an organisation called Federation Central. Could this be some form of Federation executive level of government? From the episode Amok Time, we know there is a Federation Council. T'Pol, a Vulcan, was offered a seat, which she turned down. It seems this is not an elected body. The Council seems to have the ability to wage war, probably control the military, and are very powerful. In the episode Requiem for Methuselah, the term Federation Legal Bank is mentioned. I'm uncertain what a legal bank is, but as this was to obtain information about a civilian, I assume it means a data bank, computer basically. In the episode Metamorphosis, the title of Assistant Federation Commissioner is mentioned. The Commissioner is supposed to try and stop a war. As well as the Assistant Federation Commissioner, we also have a Federation High Commissioner, who is clearly more senior and is also involved in diplomacy. This is mentioned in the episode Elan of Troyes. It's logical that any form of government is going to have a lot of ministries or department. Federation Undersecretary in charge of agricultural affairs is presumably related to the Ministry of Agriculture. This is mentioned in the episode The Trouble with Tribbles. In the episode The Cloud Minders, we discover yet more ministries. The Federation Bureau of Industrialization presumably deals with industrialization. In the episode Journey to Babel, we discover the Federation planets have ambassadors which meet in an interplanetary conference to admit new members. This implies this is not decided by some form of elected body, and instead an independent sovereign nation meets in a UN-like body to decide if this is going to occur, that is, other members join. Once you join the Federation, then federational law applies on your planet. This implies that members of the Federation have ambassadors and their planets must obey some level of Federation law. This implies a reasonably loose political structure. We know from the episode The Cloud Minders, Federation members have local autonomy, so Federation orders, although not laws, can be overridden by local governments. All these references from the episodes represent some massive facts and evidence which are difficult to pull together in a coherent form. Once again, I need to use other events to fill in any gaps, and as long as the resulting history aligns with all these facts that we have in the episode scripts, we can assume we have some form of robust theory. But this will not be simple, and we need to go back to the period after World War III and the Eugenics War to build the foundations for a possible Federation political structure. The first question I need to answer is, what kind of alliance would the First and Second World enter into in 1993, before the Eugenics War and after World War III? Initially, it would have been an alliance similar to the alliance between the Western forces and the Soviets in World War II. 2 years of fighting together would have gone a long way to heal the divisions caused by World War III, especially if Khan launched nuclear weapons against his closest enemies, most likely the USSR, and the West provided humanitarian assistance as a result. But once the war ended in 1996, this alliance would have fallen apart. Perhaps not completely, as Russia would have liked some economic or continued economic assistance, but it would have been dramatically weakened, as it was after World War II. However, when the Vulcans arrived in 1997, this ensured the alliance would be maintained and strengthened. There was a new potential enemy out there, which meant the two alliances or nations couldn't go their own way. I suspect the UN Security Council would have been the key foundational element of any robust alliance. In this timeline, China would have remained as Taiwan, so all permanent Security Council members would have been part of the anti-Khan alliance. Part of the Western economic political bloc would have been a host of other economic organisations which would not include Russia initially, but with the anti-Khan alliance, Russia now benefits from this. This new united alliance is economically and militarily bonded, although not politically. After the Eugenics War, just like after World War II, the victors would have attempted to create an improved League of Nations or United Nations, keeping what works, which was the Security Council and some of the non-political departments which provided real value to the people of Earth, and removed or downgraded the bits which did not seem to work very well, such as the General Assembly. This new body is what would be the key political structure which results in the United Earth Territories. The next boost to this alliance or structure was probably Colonel Green's wars, which may have impacted countries on Earth which were not part of this new Uber alliance. This probably encouraged most of the remaining countries on Earth to join, becoming a true United Earth Territories. Mars would have joined after 2050, as in space, this alliance could not afford any independent actors. This may have been when it was called or became United Earth, which was an economic and military alliance of humans on Earth or from Earth. It's possible when the rest of the countries of Earth join, they may have demanded some say in government, so some form of political power sharing may have begun. Mars joining may have also caused some organisational issues, but a planetary council would be logical, although initially it would have had minimal powers. United Earth and United Spaceship Enterprise came from this political organisation, and these names continued well into the era of the Federation. As the number of colonies of 1 million or more grew, these would have joined the planetary organisation, or council, which increasingly took over economic and legal functions. In this organisation, Earth would have had one vote. However, there is no doubt that militarily the organisation which came from the UN Security Council would have still pulled all the strings when it came to the military. This may have even applied to the colonisation effort, which is, after all, a pseudo-military effort in nature. I believe this organisation eventually became the Federation Council, which was made up of appointed members and was not democratic in nature. The United Earth would have also been a member of the loose trading network the Vulcans introduced, and this may have had a hand in the future development of the political system. But the next major change came as a result of the Earth-Romulan War. While standard military alliances would have been made during the war, it's what came afterwards which was the most important element, the formation of the Federation, initially, most likely, only with the Vulcans. However, it's hard to understand what this actually means when it comes to the actual structure of the Federation, or the political structure that was there before the Federation. While this is my guess, and I could be completely wrong, a structure along these lines would seem to be reasonable. The United Earth Security Council represents the executive branch of government, acting as the head of a united Earth and which commanded the armed forces. United Earth Planetary Council would represent the legislative branch of United Earth, controlling all legislation, but with the United Earth Security Council possessing veto power. A clear constitution indicating the scope of power would have been included. There could be a separate judicial branch, but for simplicity I've placed it in this group. The last level of government is local, where the overwhelming amount of government occurs for their respective political units. Initially, you would have had a Marxist Russia and a free market US coexisting in this same structure, but I would imagine the differences would begin to blur with time. When the Federation was formed, Vulcan would have almost certainly been given a council seat in the United Earth Security Council, as well as United Earth Planetary Council, except now it was called Federation Council. Some other Federation body now managed the economy, which could be Federation Central. The Federation's capital was on Earth, and as we have seen, it's more often called Earth Federation, with Federation often being synonymous with Earth. This was very much an Earth-centric federation, but one that did offer members, that's non-Earth members, a high degree of local autonomy and significant security and economic benefits. We also know that there was an interplanetary conference where all Federation member ambassadors met to determine if new members could join or not. Let's now focus on Starfleet, or the military arm of the Federation. This seems to very much remain an Earth-dominated arm of government, and as Earth was the only race actively engaged in mass colonization, included that effort as well. Vulcan was a very special case, as there was a Vulcan-crewed Federation starship, so I expect it was a member of the Federation Council. Let's look at the scripts in more detail. We know the Federation has a fleet, which presumably is made up of members of the Federation, of which we know Vulcan is one. Could this be a fleet which contains Vulcan ships? The first mention of a Federation starship is in the episode Errant of Mercy. The first mention of a Federation starbase is in Season 3, Episode 4, which is quite well down the track. There must be a difference between the term Federation and the term Starfleet, or the respective organisations. Perhaps Starfleet has a role in the political system and can override the Federation, which is almost certainly the case. We know from the episodes there are 12 Enterprise starships in the fleet. While not definitive, this does seem to indicate the Enterprise is a capital ship, which means it is part of what is called the Space Fleet, or Space-Based Navy, or Starfleet. The Enterprise in the episodes communicates with and is ordered by Starfleet. While in one episode the Enterprise is informed of a ship being destroyed by the United Earth Space Probe Agency, by the end of Season 1 it's clear that the Enterprise is under direct command of Starfleet. In one of the episodes, it's mentioned the Enterprise is part of a combined military organisation called the United Earth Space Probe Agency. This is equivalent to the Navy, for example, although Kirk calls it a combined service. It seems, or this organisation seems to control or at least monitor the merchant space fleet, as it monitored the destruction of the cargo ship Antares. It's also very likely that this organisation also commands the star bases. Perhaps this includes any ground forces as well as atmospheric vehicles or military vehicles. Finally, it seems very likely it also commands Starfleet. While the Federation has been mentioned, as well as Starfleet in many of the episodes, perhaps each Federation member has, in addition, its own fleet. Thus the Earth, probably the major member of the Federation, has its own Earth fleet. As we never really see any alien-type Federation ships, it's likely that the Earth or human part of the Federation represents the overwhelming part of the military aspect of the Federation. The Vulcans are a bit of an issue, as you would expect them to be more advanced than Earth. We know that later in the series, a starship like the Enterprise is crewed exclusively by Vulcans, which indicates the Vulcans are an integral part of the human-dominated Starfleet. While unlikely, could the humans be the main builders and maintainers of the combat fleet? That seems the most likely scenario, as the Vulcan ship, USS Intrepid, was a sister ship of the Enterprise and likely built in the Sol system. Again, this is all my personal guess, but this shows a possible structure which seems to fit all the minimal facts that we have. It's possible the starbases may have been under control of Starfleet, and that Starfleet had its own explorer ships and research bases. The ground forces is a wild card, but as Kirk calls this a combined service, obviously all the required military services would make up the United Earth Space Probe Agency. The merchant spaceships are another issue, as I would expect they would be controlled by the economic portion or structure of the Federation. But merchant ships are critical in war, so some joint responsibility seems reasonable. However, I've been throwing out lots of speculation, but the most significant point that we know for certain is a united Earth which runs 12 Enterprise-like capital ships under what is called a United Earth Space Probe Agency exists. If Starfleet is under the United Earth Space Probe Agency, then the Federation must be controlled and dominated by Earth. While this is possible for independent human planets, this must also apply to the Vulcans, for example, as the Vulcans almost certainly get a seat on the Federation Council, which controls the military. This is reasonable both for Earth and the Vulcans. We know the Federation Council consists of appointed delegates, of which one must be Vulcan. This arm of the government controls the United Earth Space Probe Agency, which represents the military and space colonization component of the Federation. It's clear to me now this is not a democratic form of government. Each country or planet could be democratic, and this level of government impacts the lives of citizens the most, so most citizens would feel like they're living in a democracy. But once we get into the world of the space military, democracy is non-existent or very indirect. A good analogy would be the British Empire. The colonial office, which controlled the colonies, was not very democratic at all, but it did give the colonies of the British Empire a reasonable amount of autonomy. This was a very hands-off and indirect form of government, which may be the only type that would work when it takes months to travel between planets. One aspect of the Federation which does confuse me is tax. How is the Federation fleet funded? I expect this is another example of looking at the British Empire for our answer. The British Colonial Office funded its activity by taxing trade. There could be a tax on the developed Earth colonies to fund the colonisation effort in addition, which all the humans benefit from, but the Vulcans would not be expected to fund this. The Vulcans could be expected to provide funds to the military, which they did in the form of funding a starship and manning it. Other Federation allies may need to pay a small tax to fund their portion of the military, or they need to provide manpower and spacecraft for Starfleet. I expect the Federation, which did use money, as several episodes clearly state, at least in the original generation, maybe the next generation money was no longer in vogue, it had a light touch on its members when it came to tax, gaining most of its revenue from taxing trade. This would make joining the Federation even more attractive. The other area of confusion that I seem to sometimes grapple with is the seeming lack of a representative parliament or equivalent. The concept of one person or one alien, one vote seems to be completely missing in the Federation. Such a body could exist, and it would be rather large, but like the British Empire, it was probably non-existent. It served no purpose and represents significant overhead for no benefit. And so we come to the end of our episode 17 of my Star Trek, the original series timeline analysis, in this case covering the structure of the Federation, political, economic, judicial, etc. The episode scripts can be found using the URL shown. Alle guten Dingen, kommen zu einem Ende.